Hello, friend. Today we are going to be talking with Rylee Joss. She's actually my critique partner, and I'm super excited that we are going to be talking about editing and getting your manuscript ready for an editor. Super exciting. So let's hop into the interview. Perfect. Well, Rylee, thank you so much for coming on and doing this little interview with me. And so I was just wondering if I could ask you to tell us a little bit about yourself and also about the kind of books that you like to edit.
Oh, that's the dreaded question I think everyone hates in any interview, whether it's a job interview or not. Tell me a little bit
Right.
about yourself. But Rylee Joss, thank you also for inviting me. I appreciate it. Been writing since I first got my first typewriter at 7, and been writing short stories and stories ever since. Yeah, I really have a passion for writing. I live in LA, and in the last 7 years I've been doing copy editing. Yeah, editing fiction. I don't really have a preference as far as genres. If it's too romancy, like a little too I don't want to go there.
Yeah.
But in general, I read lots of different genres. So, if it's contemporary fiction to sci-fi to fantasy to thrillers, yeah, I like looking at it all. Even historical fiction, that's also fun as well. As
Yay.
far as editing, except for historical fiction, there's definitely more fact checking involved.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I also edit blogs and some nonfiction like help to books
Okay.
and memoirs. So yeah.
Nice. So kind of all over the map then.
Yes.
So what are your top 5 favorite books of all time?
Oh, that's a hard one because I don't think I can just name top 5, but
Right.
I can give some of my favorites in each genre. Does that work?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. All right. I'll start off with sci-fi.
Okay.
My favorites in sci-fi is Blake Crouch, and I can't decide between Dark Matter or Recursion. They're both absolutely fantastic. You can't put those ones down.
Okay.
Fantasy, I know I'm going to say it. I'm going to hate it. I love Patrick Rothfuss's The Name of the Wind,
Okay.
but I feel like we're never ever going to get that third book, and it's been 10 plus years. And
my brother is same. He's like, oh, that book, it's never gonna come out. Like,
yes, but the way that it's written, it's so poetically written. I love the characters. The prose is just beautiful.
no.
The setting, it's amazing writing. It's an amazing story. I love that for fantasy. One of my favorite fantasy books. I also like everything by Ransom Riggs for
Oh, yes.
what is that one called?
Peculiar Children?
Yeah, the Peculiar Children series. It's really cute.
Oh, me too.
Yeah, that one's great. And then as far as thriller goes, oh my goodness. The Chalk Man by CJ Tudor, The Chestnut Man. I'm not going to say his name because I'll butcher it. Stephen King, I like lots of his stuff. There's just too many to name.
There are too many to name. What made you, so you can answer this in a two-tiered question too. So what made you want to be a writer? And then what made you want to be an editor, since you're both?
Okay, I think the people who follow me on Instagram has probably heard this story 100 times, and they're like, "Oh, again." But it's a unique story. So for me, I grew up with a mom who was illiterate. Stuff, and so when she enrolled me in school for the first time, somehow it was selected that I was an ESL student, and English was my only language. So for the first 2 years of school, kindergarten to first grade, I was stuck in ESL classes. I had no idea what anyone was saying. I was really behind everything. And once we moved and I was placed in a different school, they realized that. Yeah, so when I entered another school, they realized that I was in ESL classes, so I wasn't really understanding how to read and write or anything like that. I would just look at the pictures and I would make up my own stories because I couldn't understand the words whatsoever. And then once I was in that new school, I was in the right classes and I excelled, and then I loved it. I learned how to finally read, and I loved my version of the stories better. So I was like, wow, my dad for a typewriter, because I wanted to write my own stories. And so
Yep.
that's how I fell in love with writing. And my father's penmanship is like, he writes like a kindergartner, it's really bad. He would have me rewrite everything for him because of my penmanship.
Yep.
And my mother would have me read everything. And if she had to write something, she would give it to me to do or to look over and whatnot. So it was something that I've just always kind of done as far as like editing. Well, mother who's illiterate. So
Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
wow. That definitely would present some challenges, but I'm sure
Mhm.
it all makes for better stories down the road, right?
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely.
That's wonderful. And I'm glad that you overcame those challenges. I can imagine being in an ESL class was kind of weird because it made you probably feel like you're incompetent because you didn't
Oh
understand what
yeah.
they were saying.
I thought I was the stupidest kid in class, and I thought like I had to hide my stupidity. Like,
Yep.
oh my gosh, I just don't want to raise my hand. I don't want anyone to know how dumb I am because I have no idea what anyone's saying.
Yeah. Yeah. You know? Oh man.
You
Yeah, that would make it hard.
Right at the time, but funny looking back, of course, that, all of that. Yeah.
Oh man. Funnier looking back at it than living it the first time, I'm sure.
Exactly, exactly.
Oh man, that is funny. What is your editing experience?
Oh gosh. Well, besides what I told you with helping out my parents,
Yep.
as I got older and even to, middle school, high school, my parents and the rest of my family, extended family, would always send me stuff, letters, if it had to do anything that they were writing. Can you review this? Can you look at this for me? Can you, I just became like the go-to kind of family editor and writer.
Yeah.
Everyone knew that I had a passion for it. And then when I went to college, I majored in science and minored in English.
Mm.
And everything else, I feel like I've been editing plus years.
Yep.
But as far as manuscripts go, that's been probably in the last like 6 or 7 years.
Okay, cool. Very cool. And then do you have any certificates or
Yes, I
education?
am. I am certified to be a copy editor. So yeah,
Okay, very cool. What kind of edits do you specialize in? Which edits do you love to do?
I really like all of it.
Okay.
Yeah, I like all of it. And even with copy editing though too, you can also give a little bit of feedback into the context editing, which is part of more developmental. But I
Okay.
like all of it. It just depends on, what the client needs from me. And for me, the most important part is that relationship that you get with them,
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. When it comes to working with writers as an editor, how do you know like which projects you're going to take and like how do you know that you guys will work together? Like you said, working together, like it's kind of like a relationship. You work together to
Yes.
make their story better. So how do you know and how can writers know that you'll be a good fit for them?
Um, well, it's multiple questions. First I always like to ask like what genre they're writing, what's
Yep.
the word count, um, you know, and then getting a sample.
Okay.
I know lots of people say, well, give me the first 5 pages, to sample. And I like looking at like the first 5 pages and then give me like some 5 pages in like the middle, because
Oh,
everyone always seems to brush up and rework that first, chapter over and over and over.
yeah,
But it's like that middle chapter that you kind of need to see,
right.
what you're working with. And then so that way you can kind of even get a little bit of a timeline based on what they're needing, what type of editing that they're needing, and their word count and all of those things.
Sure.
um, yeah, and then I do a sample edit that I give to people so that they can see my style of edits to see if it's something that works for them. I think some people might think that editors just want to point out all your flaws, and I think that's horrible.
Yeah.
I think, when you give feedback, it needs to be constructive feedback, because for me, I really want what I'm working on and for your book to shine. I want it to be like the best piece out there. It's just as great for me to like walk into somewhere or have your book on my shelf and like, hey, yeah, I know, I know that author, I read that book, it's great, or I
Yeah.
edited that. So
Okay.
you want it to be great,
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
So it
wonderful.
just it depends on what the client's looking for
Oh,
and
sure.
having that sample piece so that they know how you work.
Okay. Yeah. Next question. Do you use a style guide?
Yes, I do. I
What?
think all editors need to have a style guide, and sometimes that can change too, depending on what you're working with,
Okay.
But yes, I think it's important to have a style guide. And for those who don't know, a style guide is kind of an editor's personal guide of things that they need to look at, whether it's, if you're working in developmental or copy editing or proofreading, things that you know that you always look for,
Yep.
all the time in writing. So, yeah.
Okay. Perfect. Well, thank you for describing that a little bit and going into that because there might be some newer writers who don't really know what that is. So thank you.
Yeah, and for writers who are also our authors, writers who are trying to self-edit at first too, they can create their own style guide and their own list of things to look at before they give it to an editor. So as they're
Oh,
brushing up or on their next piece of projects that they're working on, if they
yep.
keep a list of things that they notice all the time within their own writing,
Oh,
they can save that. And then so for their next project, when they're doing their own editing process, they can go through there and see, oh, am I overusing this word?
okay.
Did I do this and da 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 for themselves? So yeah,
Okay.
like you can create your own little style guide too.
That's really cool. So, like, what things would you recommend writers put on their style guide that would help them when they're going through their editing?
If they're doing like kind of copy, we'll just say copy editing, definitely filler words that they commonly use, words that can be easily mistaken when you write like from where to where, the
Yep.
yours and yours and all the there and there and there.
Yeah.
All of those type of things too. Make sure that you have those on there. Commas later on if you want to if you're not going to get an editor, but you don't understand how commas are used, you can write down like your own little rules to it. So that way you just have that for yourself.
Okay.
Um, and then there's way more that goes into detail for developmental edit notes for yourself. Edits, it's more in depth of what, to put on a style guide for somebody. It's just going to be your personal taste, making sure that you have like certain plot things that you're looking for, certain
Okay.
beats, certain character arcs. So that goes more into depth of what you need to look into.
Okay, perfect. Well, that's really helpful. I think that's something I've never actually thought about is like making your own style guide. So I think doing something like that is going to really help me. So I can imagine it's going to help many other people who listen to this video as well. What tips do you have for authors in prepping their book for an editor and what things they should be looking for?
Okay, well, I have some really good prepping editing tips that people can do.
Okay.
Um, I know lots of people get beta readers, for their work, and I think beta readers are fantastic,
Mhm.
but
Here's the thing about it.
it's important to make sure that you're choosing the right person and people to beta read for you. If
Mhm.
you're choosing, lots of people turn to family or their moms or their sisters or just family in general. And if the family member is not an avid reader, if they're not a person that reads your genre,
Mhm.
or sometimes maybe if it's your mom or somebody that's really close to you, they might not want to give you that constructive feedback. So like, oh yeah, it's nice, it's great, but maybe they just don't want to tell you something else.
Yeah.
Um,
It ends up
and then
being
you
the
don't want
equivalent
somebody
of
that,
artwork on the fridge, right?
yeah, right. And then you want to make sure that, the person's giving you, constructive feedback. And part of that is also into the questions that you leave for your beta readers to answer.
Yeah.
One of the important things that I always liked doing when I'm giving feedback, even for copy editing, you
Yep.
is giving the reader my kind of like the emotional impact that the chapter is giving me,
Okay.
or something made me laugh or feel a certain emotion. You right, because as a writer, you want to know that did I hit that beat right?
Oh,
You
yeah.
know. So for writers, what you can do is for each chapter, each scene, you can write down what emotional element that you're hoping that your readers get from that. And if you know the answer to that, that's something that you can ask your beta readers to
Yep.
see if it's aligning to what you have.
Okay.
That's more like on working with developmental editing, but it's something that you can do with your beta readers, and it's a really good important step, I think,
Oh,
in
totally.
writing.
Yeah,
Um,
that is really a helpful idea.
yeah, and I also love using. I think everyone's always heard me say this, Trello. You can use Trello, you can use a notebook, you can use whatever system works for you, but
Okay.
having kind of an editing system in place,
Okay.
um, having a schedule, and having where you take all of your notes, and take your time going through it. If you're going through your own manuscript, and maybe first you're looking at plot points, then you go through it again, and then you're looking at the character arc, and
Okay.
whatever you do, make sure you work on those bigger pieces first before you start doing line edits or worrying about typos or any of that stuff, because that can come later. You're still working and rearranging things, so don't waste your time with that.
Yeah.
But definitely figure out where the beta readers can help you out the most at.
Okay. Perfect. Yeah, that's wonderful. That's a great idea. And like what questions do you recommend that writers ask on their question sheet for beta readers? Like, are there any questions that you would definitely recommend?
Oh my goodness, yes. It will also depend too on what genre they're writing, but overall, with any story that you have, no matter if it's contemporary fiction, sci-fi, fantasy, thrillers, you always have conflict. So you want to make sure that, your conflict is understood by your readers,
Mm-hmm.
and that, you have distinct characters, that they understand the setting and the world building. So, questions like that are always important to ask. What else is there? The emotional aspect of the story. Is there enough emotion in the
Yep.
story, or what they feel in particular scenes or particular chapters?
Okay.
Um, is there anything that they didn't understand? Is there anything that pulled you out of the story as a reader, or something that you keep finding annoying?
Ooh, yes.
Right?
Okay.
Is there any sections where you get bored?
Oh, yeah.
Right? That's a huge one, because that can either be something with plot or something to do with pacing.
Okay.
Um, did you know fairly quickly that the story where the story was taking place and the time period and things like that for like the beginning part of the story? Um, does the writing suit like the genre that you're writing,
Okay.
right? Um,
Ah,
I don't know, you can really look up. There's so many questions you can look up online.
yep.
And it'll really depend on what genre you have too, to make sure that you're asking the right questions for your genre.
Yeah.
I feel like lots of people just ask basic questions. Did you understand this? What's your favorite character? Was there anything you didn't understand? And it's like, yeah, okay. But ask a little bit more, like,
Yeah.
think of some other things about certain chapters besides like if they liked the character or not.
Sure.
um, Things like that, and especially like if you're writing in thriller, was there enough suspense? you know
Yeah.
was there enough tension in this scene?
Oh,
you
yes.
know
Yeah.
and suspense and tension, that doesn't just have to do with thrillers. I mean, you have that in sci-fi, you have it everywhere, you have it in romance, right? And is there tension between the two love characters?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
want to make sure that those hit the mark, and
Sure.
that your
Yeah.
readers are grasping them what you expect them to.
Oh, that's really good. Yeah, that's really, really good. Yeah, I think that I've seen a lot of really good questions online too. Like, so it's a good point that you mentioned to just Google, and I think you can even find like templates on there that you can actually print out
Yeah.
or copy and paste or whatnot too.
Yeah, and you can even find the templates for the genres and stuff, but just don't be afraid to ask a lot of questions, some
Mhm.
generic questions.
Yep.
Um, and beta readers are there, to really help you sometimes too with more of the bigger aspects of your story, where it comes to like plot points
Yep.
and, character arc and things like that. Saying how beta readers can really help you with the
Yeah.
developmental structural part of your manuscript, but
Exactly.
um, it's still really important to hire an outside editor.
Yeah.
You're really close with your own story as a writer. So even as myself, I love writing, but I too will go get an editor, even though I'm an editor, because you need that second set of eyes and that, perspective. And editors, know more of what to look for and
Yep.
have more in-depth knowledge of what they need to look for in your manuscript. So it's still
Oh,
important to hire an editor.
that's really good. I love that. I love all of that. Do you recommend any resources like book resources, writing resources or editing resources that would help a writer with their edits?
If it's just solely edits,
Yep.
I highly suggest getting the Chicago Manual of Style.
Okay.
It's just a great book to have, and it's like super thick
Wow.
too.
Yes.
But it's really helpful if you have like certain questions, and it's just filled with so much information. You don't have to know or memorize everything in here, but one of the things that I do recommend doing is if you have those little sticky notes, if you're constantly looking up something, just put a sticky note on it. And then that way you can see, are you looking up the same thing over and over again? And that will kind of help you just think, well, maybe I need to, study this chapter a little bit more to help your writing.
That's really good.
Yeah.
What services do you provide?
I do developmental copy editing and proofreading.
Okay.
One of the things that I do for my package deals with my clients is, for example, say you're doing copy editing and you're asking questions and you're not sure, you're giving them feedback, and then after they make their changes, and they don't have to take all of your suggestions, but whatever suggestions and stuff they do take, and they've moved things around or they've changed things in the manuscript, you can give it back to me for one last go through. So it's not just I'm doing one edit for you and giving it back and there you go. I'm giving it back, you look it over, and then let's work together. So if you have any more questions for me, it's more of a relationship, So
I love that.
Yeah, because I want your work to shine and I want it to be the best it can be. So don't think that after I give something back or you give something back to your editor, if you have more questions, like ask them. It's so important to have that relationship and establish that, that comfortable relationship with them, right? Like, it's not so stuffy,
Right. Yeah, I love that. That's so good. And I just, that also shows that you just love your clients and stuff too. So, and it really shows. Right. I love that. So that's great. That's a good thing to looking for an editor. People, very good thing. So where can people find you and your editing and also your writing?
Right. Well, they can follow me, Rylee Joss, for my writing at Rylee Joss for Instagram.
Okay.
As far as my editing, it is backspaceeditorial.com. And on Instagram, that is backspace.editorial for Instagram.
Okay, wonderful. Well, I will put those in the description below as well as here on the screen. So, so that people can find you and get you as an editor, since I know I've had you as an editor, so you're just a lovely person to work with. So I definitely recommend anyone to check her out. She's a great person, so a great editor too. So well, thank you so much for joining me today, Rylee. And
thanks for having me
to do this interview.
Yeah, I feel like it's not so much an interview as it's like we just get to nerd out on a passion that we all love, right?
Yeah. No, I could geek out about this stuff all the time, and hey, I do. So yeah, it's fun when you get to talk about the things that you love, and it's what you do for your business, and you get to do it for fun and also for a living. So
right.
Exactly.
So if you guys need any editing coming up, like after NaNoWriMo and things like that, go ahead and look me up. I would love to work with you guys.